morning Newsline is brought to you by the Barbados Tourism Marketing, Inc.
The Commonwealth boss calls on Guyana's president to call elections. Our top story in Caribbean Newsline from Monday, September 23rd. From the CMC News Center in Bridgetown, I'm Dawn Paris. Good evening. Commonwealth Secretary General Patricia Scotland has called on Guyana's President David Granger to immediately set a date for elections. A statement issued by the London-based Commonwealth Secretariat on Monday said Scotland urged all stakeholders to restore constitutional rule in the CARICOM country by enabling polls to be held without further delay. The Caribbean Court of Justice, CCJ, in July validated the no-confidence motion which was passed last December against the coalition government and ordered elections be held. The president said he was awaiting word from the Guyana Elections Commission, GECOM, on its preparedness for the polls, and he got that just last Thursday when the chairman informed him that GECOM would be ready by the end of February next year. In her statement, the Dominica-born Commonwealth Secretary-General said she'd taken note of the CCJ ruling and that the court was clear that the Guyana Constitution sets out certain requirements for an election timeline after the valid passing of a no-confidence motion, and that's within 90 days. And she said a general election is therefore now constitutionally overdue and should be held in accordance with the unambiguous constitutional imperative to do so. The statement said Scotland has already spoken with the GECOM chair and discussed Commonwealth support to the elections body. The Bahamas government has created a new Ministry of Disaster Preparedness, Management and Reconstruction in the aftermath of Hurricane Dorian, which devastated Abaco and Grand Bahama earlier this month. Member of Parliament for Central Grand Bahama, Aram Lewis Jr., was Monday afternoon sworn in as the Minister of State in the new ministry. Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis also announced that East Grand Bahama, Abaco and the Abaco Keys will be made special economic recovery zones to facilitate social and economic recovery. He made the disclosures at a press conference on Sunday when he said the newly created ministry will help to focus and coordinate the national response for the recovery and reconstruction of the hurricane-hit islands. We get more in this report from Matthew Moxey of Eyewitness News.
According to Dr. Minnis, this new ministry will function similarly to the Public Hospitals Authority and will help to focus and coordinate the national response, recovery, and reconstruction of Grand Bahama and Abaco. He also added that the key responsibilities of this new ministry include relations with both NEMA and Family Island consultative committees and administrators, as well as disaster preparedness.
It is critical that we remove the bureaucratic obstructions which may hinder recovery and reconstruction efforts on the ground. And where appropriate, we will ensure applicable regulatory reform and changes, as well as the removal of unnecessary regulatory roadblocks and red tape.
Lewis Jr. told Eyewitness News that his new ministry has a huge task ahead, which will require logistical plans.
In order to restore the community to any form of normalcy, we must have the ability to move people, goods, and services. So therefore, the airport must be up and running, top shape. The seaports must be in good working order. The road network must all be good because accessibility and movement is going to be critical. And then, of course, how are we going to bring materials and workers in to restore? Where are we going to put them in terms of their staying or their accommodations, eating facilities, healthcare facilities for those workers while they're there, because we don't know what they're going to be exposed to.
The Prime Minister also underscored that the unprecedented nature of Hurricane Dorian has led government to make a number of changes to public agencies.
The National Emergency Management Agency is going to be dramatically restructured, especially in light of the global climate emergency, which is making hurricanes more powerful and more deadly. In restructuring NEMA, we will work with disaster preparedness, recovery, and management experts from around the world.
And in order to get the impacted islands back to their former levels of social and economic vitality, MIN also announced that the East Grand Bahama and Abacos will be designated as special economic recovery zones for 3 years. Under these zones, some of the measures will include a waiver of business license fees, waiver on real property tax, and the establishment of a $10 million loan guarantee and equity financing program.
The provisions under the Special Economic Recovery Zone are intended to encourage and facilitate the rapid restoration of commerce in the affected areas so as to fulfill the government's core objective of ensuring that Grand Bahamians and Abaconians can restart their lives on their own home islands.
As for housing, Dr. Minnis told reporters that a shelter and housing plan has been developed to provide the relocation of evacuees now living in shelters in New Providence to return to Abaco and Grand Bahama.
Residents and authorities in Trinidad and Tobago were Monday cleaning up after Tropical Storm Karen caused widespread flooding and damage as it passed on Sunday. Streets and vehicles were left underwater, several houses and businesses were flooded, and some residents had to be evacuated as rising waters inundated their homes. There were reports of landslides that blocked roads and trees and utility poles being felled by Karen's heavy winds. Government offices opened as usual on Monday while schools remained closed, but residents were still bracing for more bad weather later in the day. The TNT Met Office forecast rains would continue into the night. It said gusty winds and street and flash flooding may accompany heavy showers. Karen has now weakened to a tropical depression, but is still expected to bring heavy rainfall and gusty winds to Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, and a tropical storm warning remains in effect for those islands. The center of the system is forecast to move across the eastern Caribbean Sea Monday evening and pass near or over Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands late Monday night or Tuesday morning. Maximum sustained winds are near 35 miles per hour with higher gusts, and little change in strength is forecast during the next 48 hours. Meantime, Bermuda is keeping an eye on Tropical Storm Jerry, which is forecast to pass near the island late Tuesday. A tropical storm warning is in effect for the island, which was hit by Hurricane Humberto last week. But it was business as usual on Monday, and National Security Minister Wayne Keynes says it will be so for most of Tuesday as well.
All public schools will open as usual tomorrow. All buses are running as normal and are scheduled to run as normal tomorrow. All government offices will open for business as normal tomorrow. From today, Monday, and through to Wednesday, all beaches are closed for swimming and water activities. Again, from today through to Wednesday, all beaches are closed for swimming and water activities. The ILF International Airport will operate today and tomorrow as normal. No flights have been canceled.
At 5 p.m., Tropical Storm Jerry was located about 340 miles southeast of Bermuda and was moving towards the north-northwest at 6 miles per hour. On the forecast track, the center of Jerry is expected to pass near Bermuda by early Wednesday. Maximum sustained winds are near 65 miles per hour with higher gusts, and gradual weakening is forecast during the next few days. Director of the Bermuda Weather Service, James Dodson, said on Monday afternoon that tropical storm force winds should develop late Tuesday.
So we're looking at about 12 hours worth of tropical storm force winds through Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. With those winds at tropical storm force, we can expect certainly storm force gusts, potentially even hurricane force gusts over the higher elevated and exposed parts of the island. So that's something to bear in mind. But as it stands at the moment, we're not expecting Tropical Storm Jerry to develop into a hurricane. Very, very low risk of that. So tropical storm, but a strong tropical storm, so we need to be prepared for that. Now, after Wednesday morning, we should see those conditions, those weather conditions start to improve as it moves away to our distant north. We're expecting Jerry to move by its closest point of approach at the moment, around 50 to 60 nautical miles to the northwest of the island on Wednesday morning, as it then moves away into the Atlantic, well out of our area.
It's still far out, but a third tropical storm has formed in the Atlantic, and forecasters say it could be a hurricane as early as Wednesday. Tropical storm Lorenzo formed over the far eastern Atlantic early Monday afternoon, and its maximum sustained winds had reached 45 miles per hour by the latest advisory at 5 p.m. Lorenzo at that time was located 255 miles south-southwest of the southernmost Cabo Verde Islands and traveling towards the west at 16 miles per hour. Still to come, violence in Haiti forces another postponement of the Senate sitting to ratify the appointment of the new Prime Minister. Stay with us.
When you think of what we went through with Hurricane Irma, you had to be able to recognize what are the things we need to do to cope with the aftermath. The psychological trauma, to me, is probably the most telling on a lot of people.
Preparedness is the key. So when people are prepared, when people have what their resources in terms of how they can cope with the disaster, they're better able to be able to return to their normal life. They're better able to make decisions that are informed for themselves and for their family, and then for their community. Be ready. Look, listen, and link.
I'm Brittany Dixon, and you're watching Finding Fit, the show where I pair up one client with two trainers. Trainer number one.
Oh my gosh.
It's about fitness, comedy.
You know, I can do this all day, you know.
Drama.
In future, we cannot be late.
Inspirational stories, and so much more. You are gonna love it. You can catch Finding Fit prime time this fall on CaribVision.
Coming up on Caribbean Passport, highlights of a memorable CariFesta 14 in Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago. The creativity of the Caribbean and all that the region has to offer was on full display. Celebrate our Festival of Arts as we strengthen the bond between us on Caribbean Passport, the CariFesta edition, right here on this station.
A sitting of the Haitian Senate to ratify the appointment of Prime Minister Fitzwilliam Michel was adjourned on Monday after a legislator fired gunshots to defend himself against demonstrators who had entered the legislative compound. A photojournalist with the Associated Press was among two people wounded when the legislator discharged his gun in the yard of the Senate. Following the shooting, the Senate was adjourned with no specific date set for its resumption. This is the second time in as many weeks that the Senate has been adjourned in this manner. Before the shooting, Senate President Karl Murat Kantav had complained on radio that the scene had turned chaotic. He also accused the Haiti National Police of not preventing individuals whom he described as thugs from entering the Senate yard. The Senate President said they were invited by opposition legislators intent on preventing the ratification vote. Earlier this month, the Chamber of Deputies gave Michelle the green light, even as opposition legislators sought to disrupt the proceedings. When the vote was taken last Tuesday, 76 deputies voted for Prime Minister Michelle's policy, 3 abstained and none voted against. But last Wednesday, dozens of armed protesters posing as political activists took a stand around the parliament despite security measures implemented by the police. Many of them made their way into the building, breaking everything in their path. There's a call for the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines to enact legislation allowing for the establishment of a sex offenders registry. It's come from the group Leave Out Violence in SVG Association, which says its call is supported by concerned residents. It also wants provisions for strict enforcement of penalties. The group's president, Nyla John, says the group is making an urgent social media effort to petition the government to implement the register. And he made a call for concerned Vincentians to let their voices be heard by signing the petition. John said it is critical that individuals understand the serious nature of having such a law in place. Well, tourism officials across the Caribbean are seeking to contain the fallout from Sunday's collapse of UK tour company Thomas Cook. The world's oldest travel firm announced that it had ceased trading with immediate effect, leaving hundreds of thousands of passengers in several countries stranded. Jamaica's Tourism Minister Edmund Bartlett says he will travel to London on Tuesday for talks with officials in a bid to cushion the impact on the island's tourism industry.
Is the Nordics and some of Germany, as well as I think they have relationship with Canada. So we're fully aware. We're trying to get on top of the situation, and we'll be working feverishly over the next 2 weeks to mitigate the impact of it and to ensure that the fallout to our market will be minimized.
PAHO Director Dr. Carissa Etienne led a delegation to talks at the United Nations on Monday on universal health coverage in the region. Michael Williams has the details in this week's Newsline Health.
PAHO says the meeting will mobilize support at the highest level to ensure that all people receive the health care and protection they need. Ahead of the talks, Dr. Etienne said the regional organization will also advocate for the development of policies to make it easier for residents to access comprehensive health care. In 2014, PAHO said the Americas, including the Caribbean, adopted a resolution to advance towards universal access to health coverage. According to PAHO, the strategy addresses the inequities in access to health systems and services that prevent people from enjoying optimal health. Currently, an estimated 30% of the population of the Americas lack access to health care. The barriers to such access include financial, geographical, institutional, social, and cultural. PAHO says public expenditure in health is on average less than the recommended 6% minimum. In 2017, PAHO created the High-Level Commission Universal Health in the 21st Century. That commission prepared a report that emphasizes that health for all will only be possible through effective financing, multi-sectoral collaboration, social participation, and eliminating barriers to access. Mary Claire Williams, Newsline Health.
Ahead in Newsline Sport, corruption-accused former football executive Jack Warner gets leave to take his challenge to extradition to the UK's Privy Council. The details after the break. We'll be right back.
Today we're here because you were involved recently and got a rather large verdict against the largest and most successful helmet manufacturer, Liddell. $11 million verdict, 11.1.
11.5.
11.5. and it was a very unique case.
You know, I've done a lot of cases over the years. I've represented a lot of people that have really, really been hurt. And in my opinion, Rhett suffered the worst injury that anybody had ever seen.
Several key Tobago House of Assembly projects are ongoing. And to ensure they remain both on time and on schedule, THA Chief Secretary Honorable Kelvin Charles led a tour of the projects recently. Also on the tour were Councillor Kwesi Devines, the Secretary of Infrastructure, Quarries and the Environment, and a technical advisor at the Infrastructure Division, Telshon Mark Wellington. The team's first stop was Thompson River Bridge in Lowlands.
Topping our sports this Monday, former international football strongman Jock Warner Monday got conditional leave to take before the London-based Privy Council his challenge to extradition to the United States to face corruption charges. In a 40-page decision dismissing his latest claim last June, the Court of Appeal said the extradition treaty had not been shown to lack conformity with the Act, and there was no merit in Warner's case that the U.S. order which declared the country as a declared foreign territory was not valid. Justices Nolan Barrot, Judith Jones and Charmaine Pemberton also granted a conditional stay of the committal proceedings in the Magistrates Court until the hearing and determination of the appeal at the Privy Council. They also set out reduced time frames for the procedural steps to be taken by Warner, who'd had his initial claim for judicial review dismissed by High Court Judge James Aboud in 2017. And new time frames include paying a fee and settling the record before final leave can be granted for him to take his case to the court in London, which is Trinidad and Tobago's final and highest court. The 76-year-old Warner is contesting the process by which the extradition proceedings against him were being carried out, and is seeking to quash the Authority to Proceed Act, which was signed in 2016 by Attorney General Faris Al-Rawi. Warner, who is on $2.5 million TT dollars bail, was one of 9 former and current executives of football's world governing body FIFA to be named in a 47-count indictment in the U.S. in 2015. Over to cricket now. Unbeaten leaders Guyana Amazon Warriors brushed aside Barbados Tridents to win by 12 runs under Duckworth-Lewis Stern in a rain-hit CPL affair to reach the playoffs with 4 games left in the preliminary round. Chasing a meager 139 at Kensington Oval, Amazon Warriors were cruising at 77 for 2 after 10 overs when rain drove players from the field. When play resumed 1¼ hours later, the visitors faced a revised target of 97 off a further 4 overs, but only another 6 deliveries were possible before the rains returned. By that time, Amazon Warriors had reached 81 for 2 to be well ahead of the par score of 69, carrying their record to the perfect 6-0 for the season. They were fired by opener Brandon King, whose unbeaten 51 came from 34 deliveries and included 5 fours and 3 sixes. Meanwhile, heavy rain stalled Trinbago Knight Riders' bid to catch leaders Amazon Warriors when it forced the abandonment of their encounter against struggling St. Lucia Zooks on Saturday night. Choosing to bowl first, TKR had reduced Zooks to 99 for 4 in the 13th over before the bad weather arrived an hour into the contest at the Darren Sammy Cricket Ground to end play prematurely. South African Colin Ingram provided the only real bright spark with an unbeaten 52 off 34 balls, but the hosts lost wickets steadily and were lagging on 85 for 3 at the halfway stage of the innings. Each team earned a point for their efforts, leaving TKR on 9 points and 1 behind Amazon Warriors, and Zooks won from the bottom of the 6-team standings on 3 points. Switching sports now, the Bahamas Athletics Association is making a case for 400-meter Olympic gold medalist Shawnee Miller-Weibo to win a double at next year's Olympics. The Bahamian authorities have been keeping a close eye on the Olympian, who has been dominant in the 200 meters at the Diamond League. But Miller-Weibo is unable to run in both races at this year's World Champs. But in this report by ZNS Ajroon Knowles, the association has written to IAAF to ensure that Miller-Weibo gets the opportunity to make history for the Bahamas.
Well, At the IAAF World Championships in Doha, Shawnee Miller-Weibo won't be aiming for the doubles crown due to scheduling issues with the 200 and 400 meter events, but for Miller-Weibo, the opportunity for the double in the 200 and 400 in Tokyo 2020 is certainly on the table.
Shawnee Miller will be contesting one event at the World Championships. Shawnee has competed in the 200 meters and has been dominant at the Diamond League, and I think she is the Diamond League winner in the 200 meters. This is evidence of someone who is so dominant in both 200 meters and 400 meters. What is unique about Shawnee is that there are only 2 women in history who would have doubled at the Olympic Games in both the 200 meters and 400 meters in one game. That would have been Valerie Briscoe-Hooks in 1984 and Marie Jose Perec in 1996. And so, fast forwarding to 2020, she would be the 3rd woman in history to be able to compete at both events in one games. And so we petitioned to the IAAF, and they in turn would be petitioning to the IOC for consideration for a schedule that can accommodate Shawnee running in maximum and best form at the Olympic Games in Tokyo. So we've not gotten final feedback, but we believe that it is favorable, and you'll see Shawnee being granted a wish in 2020.
Veteran Barbadian jockey Patrick Husbands maintained his added money form at Woodbine on Saturday, sweeping both feature races on the 11-race card in front-running style. The 7-time champion first partnered with hot favorite Owlette to win the Canadian $100,000 Victorian Queen Stakes in race 7, and then returned in race 9 with 4-1 choice Jean Elizabeth to capture the $100,000 Sweet Briar Stakes. With the success, the 46-year-old Husbands moved his stakes tally for the season to 15, the most by any rider during the campaign. He lies 5th on 51 wins in the jockey standings with earnings of $2.5 million. Woodbine's Robert Geller has the call.
Cohen 2 lengths away in 3rd. They corner and still in front. Jean Elizabeth on the inside. On the outer, Sister Peacock waiting to make the move, and up the rail, Special Relativity angling for a run, and down the outside, Katie Baby's finishing on. But Jean Elizabeth raced away again. Sister Peacock unable to go on, and Jean Elizabeth gets the better of them and is going gate to wire. Jean Elizabeth, Patrick Husbands, 1.5 lengths, Sister Peacock, and Special Relativity 3rd. On the rails, My Gal Betty, and then Katie Baby.
And that's the sport. We'll be right back.
Caribbean Newsline is brought to you by the Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc.
A recap of the day's top stories. The Commonwealth Secretary General calls on Guyana's president to call elections. And in sport, corruption-accused former executive Jack Warner gets leave to take his challenge to extradition to the Privy Council. And that's Caribbean Newsline. For news and sport around the clock, subscribe to CanadaNews.com. And for more of our programming, log on to CaribVision.tv and check out our YouTube channel. We'll be back here again tomorrow, but from all of us at CNC News, thank you for watching and have yourselves a good night.